Hello, everybody, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the Benchwarmers Sports Talk Podcast. As always, I'm Labi, and I'm joined by Jacob. We have a lot to talk about today, as we're pretty much into a point now where a lot of sports are starting to overlap with each other. Football has taken over as the NFL season is kicked off. MLB season is heating up. There's still some news going on around the NHL, and then if we have time, we'll talk about the Champions League starting up over in Europe. A lot to get into. Jacob, how are you doing today?
Doing well. Always good to be back on the podcast as always, and I'm just excited to talk sports, man. You can't ask for anything better on a Saturday afternoon.
Absolutely. So let's get right into it. Week one in the NFL in the books. You don't want to overreact too much because it is just one game, but at the same time, it's such a short season in the NFL that every game does matter. And, there were some shocking results. There were some great games as well, some great performances, some struggling performances. And my question to you, Jacob, is what team or player really stood out to you the most coming out of week one of the NFL?
A player that kind of really stood out to me was Baker Mayfield. He's got a lot of weight on his shoulders per se this season. I think that he really took it and flew with it. I think he had a great game against the Chiefs. I don't really think you could have asked for anything better. From Mayfield. Let me just pull up his numbers right here. Like it was a great game, and it came down to one possession. Mayfield, 321 throwing yards. Nick Chubb ran it in twice. Kareem Hunt ran it in once, and Landry as well. Like Cleveland, although they lost that game, like they looked really good, and I think I think their division is theirs to lose. So, um, honestly, I think that that's the team I'm most impressed with. That or even Matthew Stafford. There was a lot of question marks surrounding his name because, well, he's coming off onto a new team, and obviously everyone knew he had potential. But yeah, I think Stafford and Mayfield, they got a lot of like they gotta really look, and they gotta really kind of prove themselves this year, and I think that both of them really did.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that for the Browns, even though it's a loss and you're starting the season 0-1, there are a lot of positives to take away. I believe it was a 4-point loss but at the end of the day,
It was,
right?
yeah, 4 points, 29 to
So
33.
yeah, so you're sticking with the Chiefs all the way up until the end. You played particularly well. Obviously, I'm pretty sure they started the game up 15-3 if I remember correctly. So obviously there are things to worry about. There's certainly it's not a flawless game. Obviously, you lost, but definitely more of a positive loss. And definitely a lot of positives to take from it. The Chiefs are expected to be one of the best teams in the NFL. So, if you're losing to them in a very close game, as you mentioned, Baker Mayfield played well. That's definitely a positive to build off of. Certainly something to go there. Yeah, the Rams looked really good. As
Yeah.
a complete team, their offense was humming. But I mean, I said it in the last episode. I really think Matt Stafford has a legitimate shot at winning MVP because he's just going to be flying in that Sean McVay offense. Their defense looked really good too. And the other thing to mention is that was up against a Bears defense who, sure, they're maybe not the same Bears defense that they have been in previous seasons, but, typically the Bears are seen as an above average defense. And, it didn't look like it on, was that the Sunday night game? Yeah, it was the Sunday
Yeah,
night game,
Sunday
I
night.
believe it was. Speaking of wild primetime games, the Monday night game, wow. First of all, if you had the opportunity to watch the Peyton and Eli Manning version of the game, highly recommend you listen to that instead of the traditional broadcast. It was so much more entertaining, and it was just a way better viewing experience listening to Peyton and Eli. They brought on a bunch of guests. It was a great time watching that Monday night game, especially because they basically predicted what was going on. It was so cool to hear in the Raiders and Ravens game. Basically, the Raiders have the ball at the 1 yard line in overtime, and Eli Manning basically said, well, Peyton Manning basically says you got to hand the ball off 4 times in a row.
Yeah.
And then Eli says two things from the quarterback perspective: is one, no hard counts, and two, so no hard counts, and so two, you don't commit a false start penalty. What happens? False start penalty because of a hard count, backs them up to the 6 yard line. They can't run the ball anymore at the 6 yard line. They throw interception. And it was like listening to what Peyton and Eli just said and then see them do exactly what they said not to do. It's like it shows you that these quarterbacks know so much about the game. Obviously, then Lamar Jackson fumbles the football. Raiders get it back and are able to win the game in overtime. That was a wild game. But the big thing that I want to talk about is the Titans and Cards. That was a game that really shocked me. The Titans did not look good. Derrick Henry really struggled, and the Cardinals looked phenomenal. Not just, oh my God, why am I blanking on their quarterback's name?
Kyler Murray.
Kyler Murray, thank you. I just kept thinking 5'8" in my head. Yeah, Kyler Murray had a phenomenal game, and Chandler Jones had 5 sacks for the Cardinals defense. I was not sold on the Cardinals, as you would if you listened to last week's episode. Once again, this is the thing. I don't want to overestimate things and freak out because it's 1 week, but the Titans did not look good, and the Cardinals looked very good.
The Titans offense, well, like if you can hold Derrick Henry to only he only had 50 yards in total in the game.
Yeah, I think it was like something around 60, but the crazy thing was he was held to it was 3 yards per carry or something very low.
And for Derrick Henry being the guy he's expected to be, and I still believe Tannehill is an overrated quarterback. I think he just has people to throw to, and that's it. But I don't think he's as good as people make him seem. And it kind of showed in this game. It exposed him, and well, you saw what happens when Derrick Henry can be contained and Tannehill can't throw 500 yards.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the other thing is they have a really tough Week 2 game against the Seahawks. Well, we'll get into previewing some Week 2 stuff in a little bit. So that's going to be very interesting for the Titans. The other two players that kind of came to mind for me was at the quarterback position, both Jalen Hurts and Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston looked real damn good, and the Packers did not look good, and Rodgers really struggled. But instead of sort of burying Rodgers, because I think there's a lot of mainstream media especially have been discussing the struggles of Aaron Rodgers in Week 1, Jameis Winston looked really good. And he had 5 touchdowns, no interceptions. And if he can not have ball security be an issue, you saw in the Buccaneers offense, he threw 30 interceptions. He also threw 30-plus touchdowns. So if he fixes his ball security issues, the Saints could be good.
Yeah, well, they also went up against the Green Bay team that they pulled Rodgers midway through the game. It just goes to show how frustrating it must be for him. But you're absolutely right. Winston is a high risk, high reward kind of guy, and last night was a high reward. I am waiting for a game where he does go 3-3, throwing 3 touchdowns and 3 interceptions, because I know it's bound to happen. But you're right. If he's able to control that ball and control the ball security a little bit more, he'll be able to be probably one of the best quarterbacks in the league, and that's a hot take for you.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely, like we said, we don't want to sort of freak out over 1 week, but because obviously he's not going to be throwing 5 touchdowns, no picks every week.
Yeah.
But if he can keep that ball security under control, and if he's not giving away free points, with the interceptions, he could have a very good year. I agree with you on that hot take. Obviously, it's going to take more than 1 week to properly evaluate him. But
Absolutely.
And then same with Jalen Hurts, because if you look at the Eagles' performance, it was really good. But at the same time, it's the same thing about consistency. You don't know if that's going to be happening. Also, I read somewhere that Jalen Hurts had the lowest average yards per target downfield. Like he averaged the fewest yards per play. I think it was like his average pass had a gain of like 4 yards, which obviously in today's NFL that's not good enough. We live in a era of NFL football where you always throw the ball and it's typically downfield for big plays. But Hurts also looked really good. He did a good job using his legs, and even though he wasn't throwing downfield, he was throwing accurately, and that's huge. And the Eagles are going to need him to play like that all season. It's just a matter of whether or not they can keep it up.
The only argument I have there is they played an Atlanta Falcons team that really looks bad. Like they look disgustingly bad. Like they have no shot of making anything whatsoever. That's the only argument I would have.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a fair point. I mean, like we said, it is against a weaker opponent, but, it is something to potentially keep an eye on because they play the 49ers this week. That's a much tougher team to come up against.
Yep.
Although the 49ers themselves almost blew like a 30-point lead in 2 minutes against Detroit.
Bro,
that's a whole other thing.
I have a fantasy at school, and you have to pick a team that would win, and I picked the 49ers thinking it'd be an easy win. It's like 41 to 8 going into the 5-minute mark, and it's next thing I know, it's a one-score game. Freaked me out, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, it was 41-17 at the 2-minute warning.
Wow.
And the game finished 41-33 with the Lions having the ball. They threw an interception with like 10 seconds left, I think it was. Or no, it was fourth down. They threw an incompletion.
Yeah, it was
going
fourth
forward
down
on fourth down. But yeah, they were a Hail Mary away from they were a Hail Mary away from having a chance at tying the game with a 2-point conversion. So they weren't actually that close, but given the fact that at the 2-minute warning it was 41-17, it definitely would have stressed out any 49ers fans or people who picked the 49ers in a death pool as you had. So actually, now here's my question for you then. Week 2, which team did you pick in the death pool to win?
I haven't yet, but I probably will be picking the Buccaneers.
Against the Falcons at home.
Yeah.
I think that makes a lot of sense.
I think that's a safe pick to say, yeah?
Yeah, I'm just looking over the schedule. I'm trying to think about maybe where I would disagree with you, but yeah, I think maybe the Browns at home against the Texans.
Well, I don't know. The Texans destroyed their opponent, and I was shocked as hell, bro. I was not expecting that from Houston at all.
Yeah, Houston looked they looked really good against the Jaguars, though, so I don't think they're putting too much into perspective.
That is true.
The last thing I wanted to ask you before we actually move on to the Week 2 matchups is, what was your thoughts on the rookie quarterback? So you had Trevor Lawrence make his debut in Jacksonville. You had Mac Jones make his debut for the Patriots in a 1-point loss. Trevor Lawrence got blown out by the Texans. You had BYU guy Zach Wilson with the Jets as they lost to Sam Darnold's Panthers. And then you had Justin Fields kind of used in a gimmicky way with the Bears, and Trey Lance also kind of used in a gimmicky way with the 49ers.
I think Jalen Hurts had the most lasting impression on me.
He's a second-year quarterback, Jacob. We've been through this.
I know. I keep thinking he's first year. Last year is such a wash for me. It's hard to remember who's a rookie and who's not. I don't know. It's hard to say because you look at Trevor Lawrence and you look at Zach Wilson and guys like this, and you have to remember what team they're on. They're on garbage teams. And Trevor Lawrence, I think, probably between at least the two of them, I think he had the better game. I don't know. I keep forgetting Jalen Hurts, bro. I don't know why it's him of all people.
It's because he was kind of buried behind Carson Wentz, and then he wasn't really used until later in the season. So I kind of this is his first full season starting, so I kind of understand where you're coming from with that.
Yeah, obviously it's his second year, and he's not a rookie anymore, but he sure sometimes kind of feels like it. I won't even lie.
Well, yeah, it's his first full year as a starter, so it definitely still does have that rookie kind of vibe. But I do agree with what you said. Obviously, Zach Wilson was scrambling for his life
Yeah.
with the Jets in week 1. And that was against a Panthers team that, once again, even though I'm big up on the Panthers this year, as I said, I think they're my dark horse team. They're not an elite team by any stretch of the imagination. So if the Panthers are causing all of this problem for the Jets, I don't think they scored any points until late in the third quarter of the game. I can only imagine what happens when they match up against a much more talented, kind of bona fide playoff team. And then same thing with Trevor Lawrence. It's kind of hard to see his talent when he's playing on such a poor team.
Yeah.
A lot of the time, people look at these quarterbacks as they're going to be our savior, but they can't be. You have to have at least some kind of team around him. So I think I'm not shocked at all that Mac Jones had the best game against debut with the Patriots, even though they lost to the Dolphins. It was a game they shouldn't have lost, and it wasn't because of Mac Jones. It was because the Patriots fumbled 4 times in that game.
That's a problem.
But I mean, and it's basically what we both agreed on. We both think that Mac Jones is probably going to be the favorite for Rookie of the Year just because he's the quarterback in the best scenario who's going to be starting from day one.
Yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, it's hard to win a game. See, it's so hard for these quarterbacks coming in. And did you know that loss, Trevor Lawrence, that was his first ever loss in his career of football?
Yeah, first ever regular season loss in his career. He went undefeated in high school, and then in college, he only lost college football playoff games. I know, it's ridiculous.
Do you realize how stupidly good he is, and people are still writing him off?
Yeah, I'm definitely not writing him off, but
No.
you're right. It's crazy that people are. I mean, he's a complete quarterback, but if you put a complete quarterback on a very incomplete team, he's not going to look
chemistry.
Great.
Yeah,
exactly.
You're not gonna have the chemistry you need to win, and winning obviously is everything. But you can't win if you don't have chemistry. Why do you think Tom Brady, wherever he goes, bringing Gronk with him, he brought AB with him, and then he was able to mesh pretty well with Chris Evans and the whole wide receiver corps because it's chemistry.
Exactly.
And having all 22 of those players back is going to be a huge success. A huge reason as to why they're going to do so well again this year.
Absolutely. Also, Urban Meyer is not the right coach for that Jacksonville team, but that's a whole nother storyline that we don't have to get into right now. Let's move on to going through the Week 2 games. I'm not going to talk about the Thursday Nighter because as a Giants fan, I still haven't recovered from that. Let's just say the Giants find new and more embarrassing ways to lose every single week, and I look forward to miraculously finding a way of going 0-17.
I mean, for football fans, it was fun. Don't get me wrong. It was a fun game to watch. But as a Giants fan, I can understand your frustration with this team, especially when you should have been up and won that game.
Yeah,
shouldn't have lost.
We wasted a good game from Daniel. Like, Daniel Jones played great, and we wasted it with a loss. And it's a divisional loss, too, and that's going to hurt because, our division is still so weak where I honestly think, 8-8's not possible anymore because it's a 17-game season. I honestly think that 9-8 might be good enough to win that division. I really do. And divisional loss
7-9 won it last year.
Exactly. I mean, I think, obviously, the Cowboys with Dak Prescott are going to be better. I'm not expecting it to be as much of a garbage division as it was last year, but obviously no team suddenly turned into a super team. But God, I mean, because it's not only a loss for us, but it's a win for Washington, so it hurts twice as much. But let's get into the rest of the Week 2 matchups.
Yeah.
So we have the Vegas Raiders off their miraculous Week 1 victory in Pittsburgh to play the Steelers in their home opener, coming off a very
shocking
tale of two halves game against the Bills. They looked terrible in the first half, came back and won the game in the second half. Raiders-Steelers, what are you thinking on that one?
Probably Raiders. I think the Raiders are on a high right now from that win. I think the Steelers just got lucky against the Bills. I think that's all that's going to happen. I think Raiders are going to win that game.
Interesting. I have the Steelers, I think, at home. That's obviously important for them. And I think, they started very poorly, but they finished strong, and I think they'll ride that momentum into this game, and I think they'll start out strong. Then we have the San Francisco 49ers at 1-0 taking on the Philadelphia Eagles, also at 1-0 in what is, I believe, the Eagles' home opener. I think they were away in Week 1.
They were away.
So I'll go first for this time.
Yeah, go for it.
I obviously I think on paper the 49ers are the better team, and I think that I agree with you in the sense of I don't think Jalen Hurts is going to be as consistent as he was against the Falcons all season long,
Hmm.
but I just think that the way the 49ers finished that game against the Lions and with the Eagles feeling really confident after a dominating victory, I think that that momentum, them being at home, it's going to make a difference. I think the Eagles are actually going to win this game, start 2-0, and then maybe kind of go downhill from here. And then I think that the 0-2 start for the 49ers is going to really have them questioning whether Trey Lance needs to be the guy.
Um, I'm gonna disagree with you on this because I think that the 49ers are the better team here, and I don't think Jalen Hurts can play like this. I don't think he can. I don't think he can do it twice. So I'm gonna have the 49ers bouncing back. I don't think that they're gonna have another game like that where they almost lose it at the end. So I have the 49ers winning this week.
Yeah, no, I think that's totally fair. I think the 49ers would be considered the favorite in that game. You have the Texans in Cleveland to face the Browns. Look, the Texans looked really impressive, but I think we're both picking the Browns on this one.
Yeah, there's no question there. The Texans were playing a Jacksonville team that still trying to get its chemistry going. So I don't think that they're gonna win.
Yeah,
I
no, I
think
mean, the Browns looked good enough against the Chiefs to be able to beat teams that they're expected to beat
I
going
thought the
forward.
Browns looked really good against the Chiefs. I just think that it came down to a one possession ball game.
Yeah, next up we have the Broncos, fresh off a Week 1 victory against the Giants. In case you were wondering how great the Giants season has begun, they are in Jacksonville to take on the Jaguars. What are you thinking?
I think the Giants will win that one. I think that
You
Daniel
you mean
Jones,
the Broncos?
Broncos. You
Yeah.
sorry, you threw Giants in there, and I lost my train of thought. Yeah, I think the Broncos looked really good, honestly, in week one. I think that they're gonna keep the momentum going, and I think they're gonna take that to week two.
Yeah. No, I confused you by bringing up the Giants again. Yeah, no, the Broncos look really good against the Giants, albeit it's the Giants. But Teddy Bridgewater, he's not an elite quarterback. He's not going to wow you with anything that he does, but he's going to have a solid game. He's the perfect example of a game manager where he's going to do everything that you need to do to put you in a situation where you can win games. And they looked impressive against a pretty mediocre Giants team. They're going to probably look impressive against a mediocre Jaguars team. I think they'll start 2-0, which is great for them. Now, you have the New Orleans Saints, fresh off a commanding victory in Week 1, as they're in Carolina to take on the Panthers.
I think the Panthers are actually gonna win that game. I think that Sam Darnold has found a new self of him, a new self, and I think that he's just trying to prove everyone that he's not the overrated quarterback that he was in New York, and I think that they're gonna win.
Let's go. I'm glad to see I'm convincing you on this one. I also have the Panthers. This is one of the Eagles and the Panthers are kind of my two bold picks this week. But yeah, I mean, I don't think that they were exceptional against the Jets, but they definitely did enough. The thing that really impressed me was Sam Darnold had a very long, I think it was like a 60-yard touchdown pass to Anderson, and it was great to see him have that confidence to throw it deep, trust his receiver, make those plays. And he was also pretty mobile. I believe he also scored a rushing touchdown, Sam Darnold, in that game. So, yeah, I mean, it wasn't exceptional when you look at the scoreboard because I think the end of the game, it was like, what was the final score, like 17-8 or something like that? But it was enough to get the win. That's all that counts. It's going to be a much tougher test against the Saints, but I'm back in the Panthers. I told you I thought they'd start the season 7-3. They're 1-0. If they can get to 2-0, it'll make me one step closer to pulling off that very, very bold prediction.
Listen, it's more than possible the way they're playing.
Yeah, also their schedule is just so weak. The other thing, also, just
Yeah.
completely off topic, but if you guys have access to NFL Red Zone, watch
Oh,
NFL Red Zone instead of like picking one game. Like obviously if you have a favorite team to cheer for and you want to watch your team, that's fair enough. But if you're just a football fan, watch NFL Red Zone. It's the best way to be able to watch a bunch of games. That's why I'm able to speak on so much stuff that happened last week, because when you watch Red Zone, you're able to see all of these plays. You're able to kind of keep a good track of what's going on in every single game. It's the best way for me to actually sound like I know what I'm talking about when it comes to football.
Yeah. Oh man, it was the red zone was so much fun to watch. It always is.
Yeah, and it was great for me because, well, in week one, the Giants were the late, like they played in the late window, so I was able to watch Red Zone for the 1 o'clock games and then watch my Giants get demolished. And then obviously, Giants were the Thursday night game, so there's no reason for me to, I don't have to watch the Giants on Sunday, so it'll give me a chance to watch Red Zone again. Anyways, moving on to the next matchup, you have the Rams in Indianapolis to take on the Colts.
Colts look disappointing. The Rams did not. The Rams proved themselves, and I think that the Rams are gonna slap them in Indianapolis.
Yeah, I think the Colts will give them a tight game. I think it'll be closer than you think. But yeah, no, I agree with you. I think the Rams are they looked impressive. I don't think the Colts defense is going to be able to stop the Rams offense. And I think in the end the offense will be too much to handle. They'll put too many points up on the board.
I mean,
Moving on.
Matthew Stafford has got a chip on his shoulder, and I think he's going to absolutely run away with that game.
Yeah, no, I think he'll continue to put up impressive numbers. We have an AFC East matchup between the Buffalo Bills, looking to rebound after a Week 1 loss, in Miami to take on the Dolphins, who start the season 1-0. If they can get up to 2-0, don't count out the Dolphins in the division, but I think you're got to be leaning Bills to get back to 1-1 and put W in the win column.
Yeah, the Bills are not going to accept what happened to them. Like they're going to want blood, and so what they're going to do is they're going to come out swinging. They're going to come shooting for the fences, and I'm so sorry, but the Dolphins are going to be demolished.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Dolphins are lucky to start 1-0. We talked about it. The Patriots only really lost that game because of turnovers. Like, the Patriots played well enough to win the game. And as much as the Bills' offense really struggled against Pittsburgh, they weren't turning the ball over. They had struggles moving the ball, but the Steelers' defense is really good. The Dolphins' defense not as dominant, so I don't think they'll have as many issues moving the ball. And I mean, they're not going to have 4 fumbles against the Dolphins again. So the Dolphins aren't going to be able to use that as a last-ditch sort of effort in order to win a game. Speaking of the AFC East, the other two teams are facing off against each other. The Patriots are at MetLife to take on the Jets.
I have the Patriots. The Jets, Zach Wilson isn't ready. I mean, I don't think any of the rookie quarterbacks are ready. But yeah, I think Mac Jones. Well, it's going to be a battle of the rookies, and I think Mac Jones is a significantly better rookie, especially after Week 1 than Zach Wilson. So I think the Pats will take that game.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a very interesting game with 2 rookie quarterbacks. But yeah, I think you spoke to it. I think Mac Jones had a better Week 1 performance. The Patriots had a better Week 1 performance. They'll cut the turnovers out. And then also when it comes down to 2 young quarterbacks, like coaching does play a huge role. And never bet against Coach Bill Belichick. Moving on, we have the Cincinnati Bengals, fresh off an overtime victory in which Joe Burrow looked impressive. Did not look like his injury was holding him back at all. Completely unrelated. We'll get back to this matchup, but same thing with Dak Prescott. I thought he looked phenomenal in Week 1. It didn't look like he had any kind of nagging effects of that injury. But Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals are in Chicago to take on the Bears in what I think might be a very entertaining game.
Joe Burrow looked really good, like really good, and I think that honestly that Burrow's gonna play the same way he did last week, and I don't think the Bears have a chance. I think the Bears they're a good team, but they were made to look like idiots last game, so I think the same thing will happen. I think that I think that it's gonna be the Bengals once again.
Yeah, I can't believe I'm agreeing with you on this one that the Cincinnati Bengals are going to start the season 2-0. But I think this is actually very close. Part of me wants to say Bears. They're at home. they didn't look great, but they didn't look great against the Rams, who are a really good team. And as much as Burrow played phenomenally, we have to remember this is the Cincinnati Bengals. This is a team that gave up 24 points to the Minnesota Vikings, who talk about tragic teams.
Yeah.
The Vikings suck. But yeah, no, I think that the Bengals will do enough. I think that the Bengals are now a team where when they play other kind of non-playoff teams, you'd expect them to compete and probably win their fair share of games. It's when they go up against the playoff teams that they're really going to get tested and probably aren't going to win too much. But yeah, no, I think when you match the Bengals up against the likes of the Vikings, the likes of the Bears, they definitely have more than enough to compete. I agree with you. I'm picking the Bengals.
Yeah. I
Then
mean, Burrow looks really good. He does.
yeah, he looked great, and also like the confidence on that overtime drive, because there was like a minute left in overtime, to be able to get them down into field goal range. That game, I really honestly thought that game was going to end in a tie. The way that overtime was just dragging on, and it was a big game winning drive that he was able to deliver there in the last minute of overtime. Now, moving on to the 4 o'clock window of games, you have the Atlanta Falcons in Tampa Bay to take on the Bucks. I don't think we have to talk too much about this. Do the Falcons have any kind of hope?
No. That's enough said. They're done.
Yeah, and then I think in a similar respect, we have the Vikings in Arizona to take on the Cardinals. I initially would have thought that this would be a closer game, but the Cardinals looked so good in week 1. I think they're going to keep that momentum rolling at home, especially against a weak team like the Vikings. Do the Vikings have a chance?
Now, like you said, the Vikings are a disappointing team this year. Talk about a broken team. Cardinals are going to keep the good times rolling. Like, they were phenomenal last season. They're going to keep that moving.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing with the Vikings is like when they gave so much money to Kirk Cousins, like they're just in limbo until they can get out of from under that contract, and I think they recognize that. I think they went 5-11 last year. I think they'll be in that exact same kind of range this year. Give them 5 to 6, maybe 7 wins tops, I think, for them. But yeah, once they get out from under that Kirk Cousins contract, you got to just go into huge rebuild mode. I mean, Justin Jefferson's a great young great young wide receiver. They have some young weapons, but oh boy, do they need a new quarterback, and they need to figure out their cap situation once they can finally get. I think Kirk Cousins is making something ridiculous like $40 million this year. Anyways. Then you have 2 4 o'clock games that are going to probably be much more competitive matchups. You have the Titans looking to rebound from their terrible Week 1 performance, but they have a very tough game, as I mentioned earlier in this episode. They're in Seattle to take on the Seahawks, and there are not a lot of tougher places to play than going into I believe it's now called Lumen Field, CenturyLink Field, now called Lumen Field, but that's a tough place to play there against the 12s in Seattle.
Yeah, and having a full crowd, Seattle will be back home having a full crowd, and Tennessee, I think, it's not good for them this year. I don't think this year they're going to do anything. They'll probably win their division, but go nowhere else. I think that if they go down 2-0, it's possibility to maybe hit a panic button of some sort. Like I can imagine that, but um, yeah, I think that's gonna be an easy win. Not an easy win, but it'll be a good win for Seattle for sure, and that'll take them to 2-0 in the season.
Yeah, I really want to pick the Titans because I think that they'll play a much better game. I think that they'll actually be the Titans that we expect them to be. But then when I think about it, is even like the Titans at 100% full strength, like playing their best possible football, it's still asking a lot for that team to go into Seattle and come away with a victory. And I think because of that, I have to lean Seahawks here.
I
The
think it's
Seahawks.
I think it's only because they're in Seattle that I changed my opinion. But then
No,
again, look,
absolutely. No, and that's a huge influence. The home field is a huge difference in the NFL, and particularly some of those teams that are dominant at home. You don't bet against the Chiefs at Arrowhead. You don't bet against the Seahawks at Lumen Field.
well, the thing is, Titans were home last week, so um, it'll be interesting to see if they're able to rebound off that for sure.
And then the other game, which is going to be I think a very entertaining game. The Cowboys are in LA to take on the Chargers. Very interesting. The Cowboys lost their first game and the Chargers won their first game. But honestly, I think the Cowboys probably looked more impressive in the loss than the Chargers did in their win. Uh, I really think this could go either way. What are you thinking?
Well, I still think the Cowboys are going to win their division. I think that they're the best team, and I think Prescott's the best quarterback. Sorry, Fitzmagic. I know you're upset, but oh well. Um, but yeah, like I think the Cowboys had the best game, even though they lost, and I think that the Cowboys are going to win that game. I think Dak looked fantastic. I think he looked like like pristine Dak Prescott.
Yeah, no, the Cowboys did look really good. And I mean, I picked Washington to win their division. Obviously, with the Fitzpatrick injury now, Taylor Heineke is their starting quarterback for the foreseeable future. I think Fitzpatrick's out. I think it was 8 to 10 weeks, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, he's
Um,
gone for majority of the season.
for yeah, like at least half the season. But Heineke looked really impressive once again, albeit it was against the Giants. But he did look very impressive. Yeah, no, the Cowboys looked really good. I think this is going to be a really competitive game. I'm still leaning Chargers. Is this partially because I hate the Cowboys and their division rival? Probably, but no, I still think realistically, even though the game's in LA, it's probably going to be a Dallas home game because, like, realistically, the Chargers don't have fans. But I think even with that, I'm going to lean Chargers. I think this is maybe a bit of a bolder take. I think that the Cowboys would be considered the slight favorites, but, I back Justin Herbert and the Chargers to get the win. Then we have the Sunday night football game, which is probably the big ticket item of week 2. It's Mahomes and the Chiefs in Baltimore to take on Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. Jacob, is this going to be a great game or what?
I think the Chiefs are going to kill him. Lamar, despite getting how many points he did last game, it was disappointing. It was a disappointing game. Like turning over the ball at the very end of the game to I think Lamar is over. I don't want to say he's over his head, but I just don't think he's as good as everyone's making him to seem. There's I think there's more quarterbacks out there that have more pure raw talent than Lamar. He's a great, sure, he can run the ball all game, but when it comes to throwing, I think he's lacking in that. I don't think they're gonna have a chance.
I mean, when I picked the Ravens to miss the playoffs, the reason why is because of how injured they are. And I think that was evident in their week 1 game. Lamar is throwing to receivers that he doesn't. The running game is not where it was last year because of the injuries, and he's now throwing to receivers that he hasn't thrown to before, with the exception of Mark Andrews. He's still healthy, but one tight end isn't really going to fix all your problems. I don't necessarily think that it's a Lamar Jackson isn't a good quarterback or can't throw the ball. I think it's just like if you take away the top 2 running backs and top 2 receivers off of any team in the NFL, they're going to have a hard time finding success.
I
And
I,
I
I
think
will
that that's part of the reason why they lost the game in Vegas. I mean, they should have won that game. And I think
I,
that's also going to factor in. And you come up against the Chiefs, and if in order to beat the Chiefs, you have to score 30, 35, sometimes more points. I don't see the Ravens being able to do that.
I will agree with you in the sense that yes, it's hard to play when you have a lot of receivers missing, and it's hard to throw to guys you don't usually throw to, but that's no excuse. That is no excuse at all for any quarterback in the NFL. You should be able to throw to whoever you can, whenever you can, because not everyone. When was the last time that everyone has been healthy in a season for the entire season? Like when's the last time a team has had absolutely no injuries?
No, no, absolutely. You're right. It's definitely not an excuse. I just think that it's an unfortunate reality for Baltimore to start this season. I think that they'll really struggle to start the season. They'll eventually sort of build up that chemistry, and I think that they will start to have I think they'll have a much stronger second half to the season, but they
Like
really should have won that game in week 1, and I don't see them.
let me ask you a question. Like, let's
Yeah.
look at a quarterback like Josh Allen. Okay, Josh Allen, Lamar have been compared to quite a few times. Do you think Josh Allen would, do you think Josh Allen would start off the same way Lamar did? No, I think Josh Allen would start off better because he knows how to adapt. And I think that's the biggest advantage that quarterbacks like Josh Allen does. They wouldn't complain, they wouldn't argue about it, they'd move on and they'd play well.
Oh, you see, I'd still take Lamar over Josh Allen.
I
That's
disagree.
my opinion.
I think I think Allen is a more complete quarterback than Lamar. I think Lamar likes to run the ball, and I think he likes to avoid throwing it because I think he knows. I don't know if he knows, but I think that Josh Allen has a better arm than him, and I think Josh Allen's talent is better around him, and I think that makes him better.
I mean, I definitely give you Josh Allen as a stronger arm. I think he has the strongest arm in the NFL. Um, yeah, I don't know. I think Lamar is more complete of a quarterback than Josh Allen is. I think that if we're doing the game of if you were drafting an NFL team and you had to pick a quarterback to start your franchise with, like right now. So obviously you're not going to pick Brady because he's 45. If
Well,
I had to pick,
Brady's still slinging that ball.
no, for sure. But I'm talking about like if you had to pick a franchise quarterback
Sure.
to build the next 10 years of your team around, obviously Patrick Mahomes is the number one answer. I think after Patrick Mahomes, I'm taking Lamar Jackson 2. And then I think for me at 3, for me at 3, I honestly might even go Dak Prescott because he's still young too. I think obviously Josh Allen's right up there. I think he's just below Lamar Jackson in my view. Although there are a lot of people like you who pick Josh Allen over Lamar Jackson. I think that they're both just such elite quarterbacks that I can definitely see that side of the picture.
Sure. And I
Uh,
obviously it's okay to disagree, but like that's my opinion, that's yours, and that's just how it is.
No, definitely. And I mean, I do agree with you in the sense that I think the Bills are going to have a more successful season than the Ravens this year. Maybe, and I think quarterback play will have something to do with it, but I think it's just because of sort of the team dynamics and the way that everything's going there. But moving on now to the Monday Night Football game, you have the Detroit Lions at Lambeau to take on the Packers. What are your thoughts on this game?
I think the Packers are going to win that, but I would love to see Detroit win that game. You know how amazing it would be for all the Rodgers lovers and all the everything following him right now, and you know how fun would that be at Lambeau, Detroit upsetting the Packers, and then now you've created a whole cesspool of drama regarding the quarterback situation. I would love Detroit to win, but I know that Green Bay is because Rodgers does not have a bad game twice.
Yeah, that's very true. Rodgers does not have a bad game twice. I'm taking the Lions.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with you, man. I'm gonna pick the Lions. I know Green Bay is gonna win, but I want the Lions too.
I'm going bold just because like, I want to have I want to have a different pick than you on a couple more games. But the other thing is like I can see it happen. I think the Lions are gonna have some confidence coming out of the comeback that they almost staged against the 49ers.
Yeah,
And the other thing is like sure being at home is a big advantage. But the other thing is, with everything that's gone on, and I'm a huge Aaron Rodgers fan. Like I think he's a tremendously talented quarterback. I'm typically, on his side. I'll typically defend him. What I will say though is the way that everything has happened this offseason, whether you agree with what Rodgers has done or disagree with how Rodgers has acted, there was a lot of conflict in that offseason, and he did not play well in week 1. If the Packers come out and start slow in the first quarter, I would not be surprised if the Lambeau crowd starts booing Aaron Rodgers and if they start like calling for Jordan Love to enter the game. I don't know Packers fans. I can't say that I'll like. It's not like Flyers fans, like Philadelphia Flyers fans. I know for a fact would just be booing them like the second they entered the game.
Oh yeah.
But that's because I know Flyers fans a lot better, or Philly fans in general. I don't know what the reception is going to be, though, surrounding Aaron Rodgers. And I can see a situation in which they start sluggish, the crowd gets on them, and then that gives Detroit all the momentum and all the advantages in the game. I do agree with you. I don't think Aaron Rodgers has back-to-back bad games, but I don't necessarily think that the Lions need Aaron Rodgers to have a bad game to win. I think even if Aaron Rodgers has an average game, the Lions could possibly do enough to win. I'm just, I'm just making this pick because out of more like emotion than anything. Like the Packers really should win this game, but I do like the way that the Lions didn't give up. And one of the big things that their new coach Dan Campbell, like he's an energy guy. And
Yeah.
I saw that with the way the Lions played because they were down by 30 points, but they were still giving it their all, and it showed when they almost made that comeback. And they're playing in week 1. They're already playing like their coach, and that's a positive sign for them that maybe we're going to see some progress from this franchise this year.
Yeah, obviously, I would love to see. Well, I mean, I wouldn't love to see Detroit thrive and survive because I'm not a Detroit fan. But you're right; it goes to show the guts and the grits that team has, and they're willing to fight even if they're down by 20, however many points. And that is, like you said, that's very positive news to see for sure.
Well, yeah, and I mean Lions fans like they just need like you're right. I'm not a Lions fan either, but I mean that fan base needs something. They need something. I hope they can make the playoffs sometime in the near future, so just that fan base has something to cheer about. But there are some NFL week 2 previews. I wrote down our results. We'll check back in next week to see how many we get right. But yeah, let's move on to a sport that we really haven't talked about too much, but I do want to talk about it before October hits, just so that we can sort of give some, previews into everything and not just jump straight in when the playoffs show up. Also, conveniently for a couple of people in Toronto, getting to talk about baseball for the first time now that the Blue Jays have stopped losing and are back on a hot streak, although they did lose last night to an awful Twins team. But yeah, baseball. The playoff race is heating up, and well, I mean, not to be biased or anything, but we'll start with the Blue Jays just because I think that is probably one of the tightest races right now, the fight for that final AL wildcard spot. It's a huge battle right now between the Yankees, the Red Sox, the Blue Jays, the Seattle Mariners, and the Oakland A's.
Yeah, and right now the Jays are a game and a half behind with that loss, and Boston and Yankees win last night. So it's really gonna come down to the wire. I don't think Oakland is gonna make it. I don't see them pushing as hard as the other three teams. Excuse me. Um, it's really gonna come down to the wire, man. Like it's going to be crazy close how these teams are coming in. Like I'm excited for this final push. Obviously, I'd love to see the Blue Jays win and make the postseason first time since 2016, but they got to stay in touch, and they got to win these games against the Twins. And they didn't win the game against the Twins last night, and it's disappointing because these are games they should be. The only positive I could see was Vladdy got his 46th. He's at the top of the league right now, and he's definitely got a huge shot at that Triple Crown coming up.
Yeah, that would be wild if a 22-year-old player wins the Triple Crown. That
For,
like
for 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 those who don't know what the Triple Crown is, it's basically the player in their division who has the highest batting average, RBI, and home runs.
Yeah, he essentially is a whole complete player because batting average means that he's getting on base, but he also shows power by leading the league in home runs, and then RBI shows that he's a clutch hitter. He's able to drive in his teammates, and it's the whole league, not the division. So like the American League, so half of the MLB essentially. But yeah, no, that would I that would be unprecedented. And we talk about Shohei Ohtani, and I know we talked about it earlier about who should win MVP, Ohtani or Guerrero. And like Ohtani's doing something that's never been done. Like it's something that hasn't been done in baseball for literally like 80 years. If Vladdy wins the Triple Crown at the age of 22, that honestly might be enough to potentially sway enough people because this is also something that's like completely unheard of. At least I believe so. I really don't think other young players would have been winning the Triple Crown. It's possible. I'm actually going to do a quick Google search here, but yeah, as I go to the back to the standings. The Red Sox, I think, are probably safe in terms of getting one spot. And the reason why I say that is because the Yankees and the Blue Jays still have to play each other.
So do the Red Sox and the Yankees. They still have to play
do
each other
they?
too.
I did
Yeah,
not
they
know
gotta
that.
play. They gotta play another series so they could beat each other up for the Jays.
Okay, wow. So, yeah, I think that obviously one of those spots is going to come down to between the Red Sox, Yankees, and Blue Jays, who can win the games that they have against each other. I think that ultimately two of those three teams are going to get in, unless the A's or the Mariners can go on a huge run. I really want to see the Mariners. Honestly, if I had to pick, it would be the Blue Jays and the Mariners in the wild card game, just because Seattle has not made the playoffs in I think 20 years, and I mean, this season has come completely out of nowhere for them. No one thought the Mariners were going to do anything. They're always kind of seen as one of these bottom feeder teams, and they've really impressed. Ty France has been a hero for them at third base, so shout out to him. And yeah, I'd really love to see the Mariners get it done, but ultimately I think it's going to come down to the Red Sox, Yankees, and Blue Jays.
Yeah, and it's going to be a race to the finish line. Like, it is going to be crazy how close it's going to be.
No, absolutely. The other the other races that are going on right now, because there's still definitely a whole lot more going on in the baseball world. It's on the National League side. I think the one dramatic thing is that there's going to be an 100-win team in the wild card game on the National League side, because the San Francisco Giants, who are at 96-52 right now, and the LA Dodgers, who are 94-54, are in the same division. So one of those teams is going to win the division and have the best record in the majors, and the other team is going to have the second best record in the majors, most likely, but have to play in the wild card game because they're both in the same division, which is ridiculous. I assume that we're both cheering for the Giants because fuck the LA Dodgers.
Yeah, literally. Like that, like legitimately, fuck LA. But I'd love to see the Giants win that division. I think they've played unbelievable. Like, I just think they've been unstoppable, and I just I can see them possibly making it all the way to the World Series.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, for me, my hope is that the Dodgers lose in the wild card game, because that would just be so funny. And I would really enjoy witnessing that. Um, but yeah, I think it's just crazy. This shows how competitive baseball is and how tough of a sport it is to consistently make the playoffs in, just because right now we're in a situation where there's a team that's going to win 100 games and their season is going to come down to a winner take all wild card game.
Yeah.
Speaking of that winner take all wild card game, it is also wide open to see who will take that second spot. You have the Cardinals currently holding that spot, but the Cincinnati Reds are one game back. The San Diego Padres, who have had a very disappointing season. A lot of people thought they were going to do much better. They're a game and a half back. The Phillies are 2.5 games back. And then the Mets are still technically alive. They are 6.5 games back. And
It's
then with
not
some of those
happening.
teams, no, I know. But then with some of those teams, they're also alive in the division race, which is why I brought up the Mets, because the NL East is wide open. Atlanta leads the NL East. Philadelphia is 2 games back, and the Mets are 5.5 games back. So when we look at the wild card, between the Phillies and the Mets, the wild card is available, but they're also available is the division, because you look at a team like the Phillies, they're 2 games back in the division and they're 2.5 games back in the wild card. So they kind of have 2 options available to them. Who do you think is going to get those spots in the National League?
I think the Phillies will. I think Bryce Harper is putting up MVP caliber season, and no one is talking about it, first and foremost. And I think he'll be able to drag that team all the way to the postseason.
Yeah, no, Bryce Harper is having a phenomenal
No, no
season.
one is talking about it. Like,
Yeah.
people aren't realizing how incredibly good he's having because he's not on Washington and he's not the big talk anymore.
Well, yeah, also the reason why is because despite how great he's been playing, the rest of the team around him has been so mediocre,
Yeah.
and that's why they honestly could miss the
Do,
playoffs
do,
despite
do, do,
having
you,
him play at such an elite level.
do you know what team they remind me of right now? The
Yeah, let's hear
Buffalo
it.
Sabres. The Sabres. You have one star player that does everything they can, puts up incredible numbers, and the rest of the team does nothing.
Yeah, no, that sounds. I mean, the Phillies aren't quite on the level of how bad the Sabres have been, but no, I totally
It's
get what you mean. Where it's one guy is just like playing unreal, and the rest of his team is just so meh. Um, the Braves have really impressed me, especially because they had the huge injury to, I believe it was Acuna, and
Yep.
despite that, they're still leading their division. Now, whether they'll do anything in the playoffs, I don't think so. I think right now, if I had to pick who my playoff favorite is. I think that it's going to come down to the Giants and the Dodgers, whoever wins that division or whoever gets out of there, and the Milwaukee Brewers. I think the Brewers, the Dodgers, and the Giants are really my pick to come out of the National League right now. But if the Braves were able to make the playoffs, if the Braves are able to win their division despite that really significant injury, I think that's an impressive building block to build forward. Obviously, Acuna is still so young. Like, this Braves team is going to be good for the foreseeable future.
Well, I hope the Braves are able to, stay alive and keep what they're doing because they're putting up a pretty good season too. But yeah, like ultimately, it's gonna come down to the wild card, and it's gonna suck that 100 winning team season is gonna have to come down to a one game wins all. It's stupid.
Yeah, but I mean, hey, that's baseball.
That's baseball. You're absolutely right.
And yeah, we will do we'll check in the MLB every week now until the end of the season, and then eventually at the start of October we'll do a playoff preview. But I think realistically in the NL, for me it comes down to those three teams: Milwaukee, San Fran, and the Dodgers. The AL is just so wide open because we're talking about the Yankees, the Red Sox, the Blue Jays. These teams might not even make the playoffs, but if you get one of these teams in the playoffs, there's no reason why they couldn't go on a run. Obviously the Yankees have talent everywhere. They can get hot whenever they feel like it. It seems like the Blue Jays are the same way. The Blue Jays have stretches where they go 10 games where they're literally unbeatable. But then they have stretches where they look terrible. And there's really no team in the AL that stands out. Like, the Rays are always good, but the Rays don't have like any superstars. They're just a very solid team. The White Sox are finally figuring it out, but like they don't really strike me as like a powerhouse. And I probably do kind of underrate the Houston Astros just because of everyone hates the Astros because of their cheating scandal. They're probably a much better team than I'm giving them credit for, but no one wants to cheer for the Astros. So I really do think that the American League is just so wide open, and I could see a Red Sox, a Yankees, a Blue Jays getting into the wild card game, winning the wild card game, and then just going on a run. And I really do think that any team in the American League could make the World Series this year.
And well, I mean, it has to happen, and I think it will happen. And I think like you said, if the Blue Jays are able to if they're able to make the playoffs and win the wild card, I can see them going on a very hot run. They were unbeatable in basically all of the beginning of September. And
yeah, they had a stretch to start September. They started September 12-1?
Something stupid like that. Like, isn't that ridiculous for any professional team to go 12-1? They've won 16 of their last 16 of their last 21 games. Ridiculous.
Yeah, and then the Yankees were the same way, where the Yankees they had a 20-game stretch where they couldn't win, and then they had a 20-game stretch where they couldn't lose. So this is just completely wide open in the MLB. But I do want to move on just because we are approaching an hour, and there's still a couple more topics that I want to talk about. A very brief NHL update: Zdeno Chara signs a 1-year deal with the New York Islanders, so he will return to. Was he originally with the New York Islanders? I can't remember whether he played for the Senators or the Islanders first.
He was drafted by the Islanders.
So there you go. He goes back to where he started his career. Big Z is back on Long Island. And yeah, as I quickly pull up his statistics, he last played for the New York Islanders in the 2000-2001 season after being drafted by them in the 1996 NHL draft, 56th overall. Just in case you were wondering how long he's been playing in the NHL, this is his age 45 season.
He made his debut in 97, and that's when Matt Barzal was born.
There you go. So big congrats to Big Z, and that's a huge addition, I think, for the Islanders, because the Islanders really have their defense set. Obviously, you have Pelech and Pulak. They're going to be leading the way going forward. Zdeno Chara is going to be probably a third-line power play guy for them. They're not going to ask him to, log key defensive minutes or log a lot of defensive minutes. He's going to be a depth defenseman, and he's going to be a hell of a depth defenseman, I think, even though he's literally 45 years old.
Well, we look at Ovechkin and we see that age doesn't really matter. So if he can continue to play well, or if he can continue to do what he's doing, then let him play.
Absolutely, he was still very effective with the Bruins just 2 seasons ago, and obviously we don't have to talk about last year. It was kind of a down year just because of the team he was on kind of also had a down year. But I mean, I think it's a really good fit for the player and a really good fit for the team. It's going to go really well.
Well, I hope so. I hope he has a decent career to finish it off, and that Islanders team looks really good. So maybe he has one more shot at the playoffs.
Yeah, definitely a shot at the playoffs. You could argue even potentially an outside shot at the Stanley Cup. As much as them being a division rival with the Penguins, I don't want to admit that. I mean, hey, Barry Trotz finds a way to get his team to the conference finals.
And they only lost 1-0 to Tampa last year.
Exactly. But there's a quick hockey update. Obviously, it's we're at that part in the off season where we're just getting ready for preseason to start. It is right around the corner. We're midway through September. We're really approaching October and the start of the hockey season once again. Speaking of the start of seasons, if we flip over to Europe, the Champions League and Europa League, and the new Conference League, but let's be real, no one cares about that. People barely care about the Europa League. That has started up again, and I think that the big takeaways from the first round of games is that Barcelona are not the same Barcelona that they used to be. They lose 3-0 to Bayern Munich. Manchester United, albeit they got a red card, but they lost to Swiss champions Young Boys 2-1. So Ronaldo and Manchester United off to a losing start. And PSG and Messi don't lose, but they are held to a 1-1 draw against Belgian side Club Bruges. A very unpredictable start to the Champions League, and there were also some ridiculous games. Manchester City and Red Bull Leipzig played a 6-3 game in which Christopher Nkunku of Leipzig scored a hat-trick, but his team lost 6-3, which there aren't many times in soccer where you score a hat-trick, but your team still loses by 3 goals. An absolutely wild start to the Champions League, Jacob.
That sucks for sure. You do everything you can for your team just for your team to lose. Unfortunately, and yeah, how many times do you have 9 goals in a soccer game? Like, that's ridiculous. 9 goals in a soccer game. Messi, Mbappe, and Neymar, they look good. Not great. They look good. And Ronaldo looked okay as well. Like, it's just a start. Like, literally, there's nothing too bad to worry about, and there shouldn't be anything to worry about. I think that they're just warming up and wait until they start getting their form back, and then it'll be game over for the other teams.
Definitely. I mean, I think there might be a little bit of concern, particularly for Manchester United, just because if you look at the teams in their group, Young Boys is seen as the weakest opponent. They have Atalanta and Villarreal also in their group. It's definitely not the strongest group. Like, they should be fine with the opening game loss. But, you still have to think about that was probably one of the easiest games you're going to get in that group, and you threw it away. So while I absolutely agree with you, there's no reason to panic. You're throwing away one of the easier games. Kind of same thing with PSG. Club Bruges, you're in a group with Man City and Leipzig. Games against Club Bruges are probably going to be the easiest games. So in order to, when you drop points, that obviously is going to be seen as at least slightly concerning. The last story that I wanted to close with regards to the Champions League is FC Sheriff. Just Google these guys. This is a crazy story. So they're technically Moldovan. They play in the Moldova League. They are the Moldovan League champions, and they went through all of the qualifying rounds and won all of the qualifying rounds to get to the group stages of the Champions League. They're the first team from Moldova to qualify for the Champions League, and they actually won their first game in the Champions League. They beat Shakhtar Donetsk, the Ukrainian side, 2-0 at home. So they are actually leading their group after one game, a group with Real Madrid and Inter. Obviously, they have to play Real Madrid and Inter. I imagine that's not going to go as very well. But they're actually not Moldovan, because I was looking I read this article and just Google FC Sheriff. It's a ridiculous story. So are they actually the city that they play in is actually in a contested like a territory that has tried to claim its own independence from Moldova. I believe it's Moldova. I might be getting that right. Wrong. I need to like double check that I'm saying the right country. But yeah, they're in Tiraspol, which is like yeah. So it is Moldova, but it's a region of Moldova called Transnistria that is an unrecognized territory. They've basically declared their independence from Moldova, but it's not recognized by like the United Nations or anybody, but like they believe that they're their own separate territory. So they're technically representing Moldova in the Champions League, but they're not. And like this unrecognized like republic is wild. They're basically like loyal to the Soviet Union still, and like there's a statue of I think it's Lenin outside of like their main government building. Like it's an absolutely ridiculous story. Like and they're just in the Champions League and they've won their first game. It's wild. Like again, I highly recommend that you Google FC Sheriff and just look into them. It's like I can't believe that like this place exists.
It's like one of those Cinderella stories that, well, as Cinderella never was known by anyone, that's what this story would be. It's a cool story for sure. I you've told me about it multiple times, and it's really interesting to be honest with you.
Yeah, and then like even beyond that, like the politics behind this are like so basically like this team is run by like a company, but like the company basically controls like the entire government of this like territory, and so they just have so much money and they like funnel it all into their soccer team, which is why this soccer team that competes in the Moldovan league, I think they've won 20 of the last 25 league titles in Moldova, and there are no Moldovans on their team. Like they just bring in like all of these international players because they're the richest team in the league. So like I don't even know if I would consider it a Cinderella story. Like I guess it is because it's like a small team from a small country finally making it to the Champions League group stage, but like it's just so wild because it's like how does this place exist still in the world? And like there's definitely a lot of like shady sketchy shit going on behind like the behind closed doors, but like I just
Yeah.
think it's wild that this team is going to play Real Madrid next week in the Champions League.
Yeah, and that's crazy to think. Literally crazy to think.
Yeah, so I mean we do want to kind of keep up to date on stuff going on in soccer, focus on the Champions League, kind of some of the big games going on in the Premier League and around the rest of the soccer world as well. And we will keep that sort of up to date. Obviously, we've been focusing heavily on the World Cup qualifying as well, obviously because of Canada's involvement in that. And that's something that we will also continue to keep up to date on as there's another international break going into October. And I think at that point we might kind of look at the overall picture in other regions as well and kind of see which teams we think are going to qualify and which teams have a real legitimate shot of qualifying. A little preview for that. If you want to start making bold predictions, the Solomon Islands. I personally believe the Solomon Islands have a legitimate shot at qualifying for this World Cup, which sounds crazy, but I'll explain it all in an upcoming episode, hopefully. So there's a little teaser for potential future discussions in soccer.
Yeah, well, honestly, I just can't wait for Canada to come back from the international break so that we can finally go back and watch some good Canada butt kicking. I don't know,
There
man.
you go. No, I think that's perfect. And with that, I think that will conclude another episode of the Benchwarmers Sports Talk podcast. Jacob, any last thoughts about anything going on this week in sports?
Well, hockey's coming back. I'm going to a preseason game and like the last game before the regular season starts to see Montreal lose to Toronto in the practice squad. So that'll be fun.
There you go. Looking forward to that, I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, like we said, hockey right around the corner. We'll definitely be talking about that a whole lot more. But with that, we thank you guys so much for listening to a brand new episode. We'll be back next week where we discuss week 2 and the upcoming week 3 at that point of the NFL. We'll update you on the MLB playoff race, maybe talk some hockey, talk some soccer, talk about whatever else is going on in the world. Maybe FC Sheriff beat Real Madrid. You'll never know. But until then, thank you very much for watching and listening, and we'll see you next week.